Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Cattlemen's Congress. We are excited for our last day here in Oklahoma City. We're going to get started with your Prospect Steer and Prospect Heifer show here in just a moment. If we could please have you all rise for our national anthem. Well, once again, good morning and welcome to the Cattlemen's Congress. We're excited to get started with our final day here in the Jim Norick Arena. Over here in Ring 1, we're going to get started with your Prospect Heifer show. Your judge this morning, Mr. Chad Holtkamp of West Point, Iowa. And over here in Ring 2, we're going to get started with your Prospect Steer show. Your judge this morning, Dr. Mark Johnson of Orlando, Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Mr. Chad Holtkamp and Dr. Mark Johnson.
Good morning, everybody. As we get started over here on your Prospects Heifer Show, very excited, and I know we've got, in this scene, we're going to have a little bit of variation of kind as we put these composite cattle here together in the crossbreds. But boy, what a good way to start here the show. I think we've got a nice pair of cattle to go ahead and start with. The Gold Heifer went ahead and start with. I really loved her from a look and a presence standpoint. She's still got some stoutness. She's got some power, but yet she's still smooth the way she's put together there. I like her extra size of foot and bone. I think she's built really good from that standpoint. Now, if you'd change her just ever so slightly, I'm just a little concerned as we get into just her rear hock just a little bit. Try to relax her there as we talk a little bit, but I like her look. I like her presence. The heifer there in second, they give up a little bit in terms of weight, and I think that's where she has a distinct advantage over my class winner is I think the other one is still sound in terms of her structure, but I really like the way this one comes off of her hip and her hind leg comparatively. She's a good complete heifer. She's a little more moderate in terms of her size as we see her in terms of her growth as we project her on down the road, but she's just a good, basic, complete, fundamentally sound kind of a female to fit right in there, and I think there's some give and takes. The Baldy heifer sure is one that captivates me in terms of just that white on her face, her length of neck, her power. She's got some upper shape to her rib, still uniform in her mighty depth from her forerib to her rear rib and flank. Biggest thing for me, I just like to change her the way she's assembled into her hip. She gets wide in terms of her hock as she gets out there, ducks herself underneath her just a little bit more than I'd like to see, but I do like a lot of things about that heifer. A little more moderate size in the next Baldy coming out. I like her boldness. I like her shapeliness from a positive standpoint. I think we can still talk about power and shape in terms of breeding females. I still think she has that maternal look to her. Just a little bit more moderate in terms of her size. I'd like to give her just a little bit more natural growth as we go up there and square up a little bit from hooks to pins just a little bit. But again, a very, very nice heifer. The squareness and body of the next black heifer coming out, I like really well. She's good in terms of her rear rib and flank. She's got some bone. She's got some muscle. I like the pattern she gives us from the side. But when we talk about a structural issue, need a change her in terms of her rear hock. She gets a little bow-legged as you get right in there behind her. I'd just like to correct her on her hind leg to make her a little more competitive. The heifer coming out here next. You love her length of body, her smoothness of joints, her length of stride. Just need to give her just a little more of her in terms of just lower rib shape, a little more muscle, a little more power for her to go ahead and move up a little bit higher for me today. But I do like her size and scale and balance a little better than the Gold Heifer to round up the class. I do like her smoothness. I like her center body. But one kind of gets up a little bit in her top underneath herself as we put her in motion. But again, it's still a very, very nice heifer. Good way to start our prospect show on the heifer side here today.
Well, congratulations over here in the Prospect Heifer Ring. First place, we'll get a Hetty Walker. Second place, exhibited by Poppy Moore. Third place, we'll get a Kate Smith. Fourth place went to Cheyenne Chaliwa. Fifth place, exhibited by Riley Wayrick. Sixth place went to Braden Schatzman. And seventh place to Chansey Hawk. We'll now look to see Class 2 here in your Prospect Heifer Ring. Heifers over here coming in ring 1, Class 2. Weight ranges will be 695 to 769.
Well, good morning. It's an honor to be here at Cattlemen's Congress working the prospect steers. And we definitely got off to a bang in this first class. There are some really good ones in here. These top two calves are really nice. They're sound. They get out and go. They've got some flexibility. And I guess the differences in them that I see is this steer with a little more white marks on him is a little better in the way he ties in through his heart. The way he comes out of his shoulder and back into his forerib, I like a little better. Super powerful, big topped calf. He probably feeds out of the backside of his shoulder there a little fuller than that steer in second place does. But both those calves have a lot of similarities. And probably, if anything, the steer that ends up second to him may set in just a little better in his tail head, probably a nickel longer bodied. Both those will be a lot of fun to feed and work with and show, and I think tremendous future to each of those calves. I like that one in the lead just a little bit better. Third place calf, the smoke that comes out, really big hip, stout, big forearm calf. I like the flexibility he's got underneath. Probably not quite the hair coat, the sheen, the eye appeal to him as we look at him this morning as compared to those top two. A steer that's a little lower at his shoulder than his hip, but he's one that's got some future when you think about the body shape, the composition, the structural base. Really neat front end in that calf. There's a lot to like in him, and I think a lot of future. A Hereford Mark calf that we come in with next, it looks like he'll be ultra competitive in breed shows at some point down the road. Just good cattle. Really like the forerib, really like the heart, the way the rib cage lays in that steer. Another really sound skeleton calf. And that's the advantage he's got in this black steer that follows him. There's not quite the top and the hip and the muscularity in him, the Hereford that is, of those steers that precede him, but a really strong steer that I think's got a lot of good in him. This black steer that comes out in fifth, just standing still, I like that rascal a great deal. He's super muscular. He's really neat fronted, really bold sprung, wide centered kind of calf. If I could loosen him up in his rear pastern and see him flexing that ankle a little better, then I think we start working him up spot or two in class and he becomes more competitive. Get into really about three steers here next in 6 through 8. They are good bodied. They're good doing. They look like they'll be easy to feed. None of them have got quite the degree of muscularity of some of those calves that are beating them. Not quite as neat up in their front end as you look at that black one up there. This white mark calf has got a little more set to his rear hock, but a little neater fronted. This lighter steer that comes out next, I like his rib cage and the degree that he looks like he'd be easy to feed. He's got a little extra set to his hock and not quite as much bone and foot underneath him. Get into a black calf here next that leads off a pair that are muscular and long and look like they're going to have some cutability, but they both need to be a little leveler in their hip and more correct in the way they get off their rear leg. Neat made steer here, this red baldy. I'd like to strengthen him a little bit in the way he goes behind. He's not quite as stout as some of those up above him. A neat pattern calf that ends up in 12th place. Wants to turn out a little in front, not go with quite the reach and length of stride that he needs to. And a calf that looks like he's got ample growth and going to have some potential down the road and probably a little sounder than that one right above him, but gives up some eye appeal and look in this particular class. Let's put our hands together for that first set of prospect steers. Really nice set of cattle in that particular group.
Well, congratulations over here in a prospect steer ring. First place in that class exhibited by Laney Holt. Second place will go to Jackson Marlar. Third place, and congratulations, goes to Jet Moore. Fourth place went to Skylar Sturgeon. Fifth place will go to Taylor Glover. Sixth place exhibited by Raylan Northington. Seventh place, Gunnar Moore. And eighth place to Connor Mack. Now in the ring will be Class 2 here in your prospect ring. Weights on these steers are 717 to 744.
Over here on your heifer ring, boy, really a challenging class put together. And I talked to that young lady there with the high quality calf that just didn't want to be showed here, and a couple others here just not wanting to relax and kind of show themselves off. And as we get out here a little longer, this young man's heifer kind of gets relaxed and kind of gives us a really good look. But we've got two different types of heifers, or we've got some different strengths, I guess you could sure talk about, and some we look at and I talk about. But the heifer to start with, I think, just so good, and just her balance, the way she proportions from her front to the front to the rear. She's explosive in terms of her rib. But part of her rib, I kind of asked my question too, is how much rib do you need at this age? So those are some things I was trying to debate in my own mind. If she's just not a little quicker in terms of her maturity look. But when she gets relaxed and the young man gets her set off, I think she just gives it an awesome, well-balanced look from the side. Good in terms of her angles, good in terms of her structure, does some things there to a high degree. Now the heifer in second, now she's got some more unique pieces to her that I like really well. And you talk about one, if you like them, that come up high out of the top side of their shoulder, very attractive in their head, jaw, throat latch area. She's good that way. She's real good in terms of the way she sets down on her hind leg from a structure and a softness standpoint. I like that about her. For me, and the question I've got for her, I would like to see her just open up behind her shoulders, have a notch more forerib, a little more natural softness to her body. But yet one, I think, as you project her on down the road, is one I see as a big heifer, being very, very competitive as she does some of those things right. She's unique. She's high quality. She's got a lot of good. Both of them were just little differences we had to just tie on to in terms of one to fall into. Heifer in third, I think she fits right in there in the same type of mold. She's not as much of her from just a power and mass standpoint to the two heifers that stand right above her, but I think she matches in terms of just look and presence, and she looks really good as we put her on the move. And I think that's where you really study balance in terms of one, have some upper rib shape, but just maintain her balance really well as we put her in motion. I like that about her. That's a nice heifer. Just got to give her a little bit more to be a little bit more competitive. The yellow heifer could sure relax and give us a great look when she puts her head up in the air. I think she's really smooth in terms of the way she's put together. there. She too could probably be opened up just a little bit more in terms of lower width, a little more dimension, I think, as we look at her down low. But I think I just really appreciate just the function, the goodness about her angles, the depth of body she possesses, and still a good smooth shoulder, real good look, nice kind of a female. Next heifer coming out that young lady I feel for, just trying to get her broke. As she goes out of there, she's a high quality heifer, just give us a hard time to give us a look to it. A powered up heifer here and a black heifer here in front of me. I like some of them things about her. She's still good about her angles. To me, has a little bit of shoulder, and as you watch her go, she becomes real level the way she comes out of her neck into her shoulder and almost gets underneath herself in terms of with her hock back in terms of movement. Just like to change her from a balance standpoint, we put her in motion, but a good stout, powerful, good kind of a female. Another, a smooth made, very feminine heifer follows right behind her. Just need a power up. She gets a little flatter in terms of her forerib, a little flatter in terms of her hip, and gets a little more refined in terms of her foot. But with that, she's a very feminine, deep-sided, straight-lined heifer that we can sure find a lot of good in her. Young lady here brings us a different heifer in this class, definitely an upgrade from a body and a balance standpoint. If you look at her from her shoulder back, she's got a lot of good to her. I like her forerib to her rear rib and flank. I like her at her hip. To me, she gets a little jammed up in terms of her neck into her shoulder. I'd like to relax her angle there in her shoulder, but you do a very nice job of showing. Appreciate your positive attitude as you get out here that you portray. The Baldy heifer, she's very practical. She's not extras in terms of bone or leg hair or some of the things of the other cattle we had there, but she's got some shape to her. She has some body. She looks to be a little easy fleshing. I just like to give her a little bit neater look to her compared to some of the other cattle. The shorthorn heifer gives us the flat-shouldered, smooth-made, strong top look that we like, but yet just gets a little too flat, just a little restricted off of both ends for us to move any higher. But still a nice pattern, high-quality heifer. We sure compliment her. Again, outstanding class over here in your Prospect Heifer Show.
Well, congratulations in Class 2 over here in your Prospect Heifer Ring. First place will go to Trip Yoakum. Second place in that class exhibited by Parker Lockhart. Third place will go to Darby Darbin. Fourth place, and congratulations to Parker Bell Sproul. Fifth place will go to Reagan Wilborn. Sixth place, Lana Danielson. Seventh place exhibited by Hallie Delk. Eighth place went to Chancey Hawk. Ninth place exhibited by Nick Sullins. And 10th place will go to Kyle Rule. We'll now look to see Class 3 over here in your Prospect Heifer Ring. These heifers weigh from 780 to 845.
Young lady steer that's going to win the second class. I like the combination of body, muscle, really big stout hip in that one. I think that calf's good enough in his running gear and the way he gets out and goes. I like his balance from the side to have all that barrel and top and those neat lines. Neck attachment's high, front end's really clean. And he's one that I think is a real solid combination. The one that I end up with that I feel is a lot like him is this tan steer that follows him. And you know, this calf's not without his advantages. He's probably got a little more bone and foot underneath him, particularly the foot part, Another steer that's super muscular, probably a little bigger coming up into his forearm, but a steer that doesn't have quite the fullness through his forerib there. Probably not quite as dead level and square in his hip as that steer that starts it, but they're the two that I think combine power and look and a good skeletal base and sort up to the top end for me pretty easily. Third and fourth place steers get a little closer. I like the front end of the third place steer a little better. I think he's just a little neater up through there. I think he holds himself together a little better as we get those cattle out on the go. I think both those steers have got an ample degree of muscle, neither probably quite as much as those cattle that beat him in class. The steer that comes in fourth, a little bit the deeper flank to that particular pair, but as I said, not quite as neat in his look from the side, got a little more front end to him. Follow up with this smoke that's got the star in his forehead. Steer that's really appealing on the profile, neat fronted, good flank line, really correct in his lines, not quite the power back through his hip that he'd need to run a little higher. Follow him with a light red steer that's really muscular, big hip in him. I like a lot of parts of that steer. He's one that looks like he's going to have a lot of cutability at some point down the road. He just runs a little shallow back in his flank line. End up with him where he goes as a result of that. The black and white calf that comes next, front half of him is really neat. He gets out and goes with some reach. He's attractive through his front end. As you get back to his hip and hind leg, he's a little awkward in the way he sets down in those rear pasterns. Just like to strengthen him up there, see him go a little stronger off that rear leg. A red steer that follows him that's got some muscle and some hip, needs a little more body and eye appeal to run in this kind of class. And a black steer we conclude with, I appreciate that rascal's sound-footed. He looks like he's got some grow and potential cutability. Just gives up some eye appeal and look in this particular set.
Well, congratulations over here in the Prospect Steer Ring. Results out of Class 2. First place will go to Sierra Collins. Second place goes to Reed Ragsdale. Third place exhibited by Tanner Otto. Fourth place will go to Coy Moonen. Fifth place exhibited by Guy Hayes. Sixth place Olivia Moore. Seventh place Raylan Northington. Eighth place Taylor Glover. Ninth place Kyle Rule. We're now going to bring in Class 3 over here in the Prospect Steer Ring. These steers weigh from 755 to 770. Well, we'd like to take a minute to thank all the sponsors that make our Prospect and Market Steer show possible. A special thank you to Herzog Cattle, Hydrostat, Feral Livestock Trailers, Tusa Show Cattle, Collins Cattle Company, Black Vessel Cattle Company, Newman Cattle Company, Steerwalt Cattle and Clinics, Bonham Show Cattle, Your Fun Warehouse, Patch Landing Cattle, Brian Martin Show Cattle, Buck Cattle Co., Professional Animal Health Center and the Barker family, RNS Excavation, Brandon and Bree Horn, MelatonинImplants.com, Mims Cattle Company, Helderman Boys Show Cattle, Goretzka Show Steers, Smith Cattle Company, and RJ Cattle Company. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to thank all the sponsors that make our steer show possible.
This one gets interesting up on the top end. I think there's several steers in here that bring a lot to the table. In the end, this tan calf, to me, puts together the right kind of body type, the right kind of muscularity and composition, the right kind of skeletal base, the way he can get out and go, the angle to his joints. He's still got a neat look through his front end. And we're dealing with some different degrees of comfort in terms of being in a show ring as we look at some of these lighter calves that probably haven't been out a lot. And it puts a dynamic in this class that makes it interesting to sort. This calf, I would tell you I'd like to change him in the way he lays in at his tail head, and I really believe it needs to be a little flatter. As I say that, I'm not so sure if he didn't relax and maybe by the time he's shown and been out a little bit more, that won't look like quite as big an issue. But that's the big advantage I see to the steer in second. Calf in second, this black one is really sound-footed and well-presented, and he pairs with that steer that wins it as the two really correct, good-moving, good skeleton cattle we got in here. And in particular, I really like the way he's made in his hip, the way his tail head lays in him. I think that calf has got ample muscularity and power. Where he ends up in second, to me, he's just a little shallower bodied, runs a little shallower back through his flank line. I think if that comes in him in time, that steer has a tremendous amount of potential. I like a lot of things about this smoke in third place. He's a little better bodied and deeper ribbed than that one that precedes him. Super sound fronted, well presented, attractive up in that front end. Good top laid in him, good degree of muscle. This calf, while I call him sound and I like his skeleton, he needs to be stronger in the way he goes, particularly off that left rear leg. He doesn't always want to set down and just particularly drive and flex and be as strong in that rear leg movement as what he could be, but I like that calf a great deal. I commend this young man in fourth for sticking with this steer. This is a steer that's got potential. He's long, he's neat fronted, he's muscular. He's a little nervous out here today, needs to be better hipped, needs to handle his hind leg with more strength and correctness. But I think there's good in that calf, and he's sure worth continuing to put the effort into because I think he's going to look better and better with time. Another lighter colored steer that follows him, neat made, good bodied steer that just needs to be powered up and have more genuine muscle in him. A calf that follows him looks like he's on the upper end of the weight break in this particular class. I like that steer in terms of body. He's not all bad structured. I think there's some future to him, but as we look at him right now, he's a little plainer, flatter haired, lacks some eye appeal in this particular group. We end with a black steer, pretty solid kind of prospect steer. He's got some rib, he's got some muscle. He's not all bad in terms of skeleton, but a little plainer, a little more out of balance, gives up some eye appeal to those that get in there above him.
As we switch back over here and put your focus here in this Prospect Heifer show, and man, what a good class. And I tell you, that's just so good top to bottom. And when you get into, composite or showing these composites, you can obviously tell we've got some purebred cattle of various breeds, and we're bringing them strengths out here and trying to give them a match up in terms of placing. Really makes it challenging, but I do, as we talk all the way through, there's a tremendous amount of good in these cattle that we can look and talk about. As we go through, and I kind of pulled them back around, there's 3 out here in contention in terms of your class winners that I sure like and appreciate, and some things that we go through. The heifer that, to me, that became the combination heifer is the heifer the young man has. I go ahead and lead out with. She wants to walk a little fast and maybe kind of doesn't hold herself together near perfect, but when you look and study her, she is really big-footed. She's stout at the ground. She's flexible. You know, she's got a lot of power. You get right up on her. She's still smooth about her shoulder. She's deep in terms of her center body. You know, there's times I'd like to see her she ties in really good the top side of her shoulder into her top, which I think is important to me. A little fuller in that lower forerib just a little bit if we're going to change her just a little bit, and maybe refine her head up just a little bit from a femininity standpoint. But it matches her in terms of just her power, her dimension. I think that's a very, very high quality heifer. I got a lot of good. Young lady's heifer that we go ahead and put in second. We kind of fit her right in between the two big power heifers, you know, but to me, her just practical build, her femininity, I love her center body. She's just so near perfect from forerib to rear rib and flank. If you want to look and talk about and really see and analyze one, I like that about her. You put her in motion, she maintains her balance really well. For me, as we get out here of the top three, where she becomes is a little more refined in terms of her foot size, and there's times she gets stopped, I'd just like to change her just a little bit in terms of her hip a little bit, and I think if we just power up a little bit more in terms of muscle, but I like her completeness, her soundness, so look the way she gets out there, very, very nice heifer too. Heifer in third, there's no doubt about that is an extremely high quality heifer that's got a great look. She gives us the most maturity out here within this class of weight range. I like power in cattle, and she is on that upper edge of one that's very powerful. She's real good in terms of a structure to her hind leg. To me, in terms of her coming third in the breeding female show, I'd just like to see her tie from her shoulder into her forerib just a little bit better. We put her in motion. I'd like to see her collect herself a notch better compared to the two cattle right ahead of her, but that one there has got a tremendous amount of good to her and a lot of uniqueness you can look and talk about. Then we come down here and then we go ahead and grab the Hereford heifer, Pierian heifer here in fourth. Beautiful from the side profile. You talk about one from femininity in her head, her neck, the way she blends into her shoulder. She's good in terms of her belly swoop. She's still good in terms of foot and bone. Like her flexibility, we get her out on the top. She got one, I think they've done a good job of feeding her because she's got some condition up high where she's got some, you know, as you get right on top of her, got some width to her top. But you study her, she gets a little flatter in terms of her shape, not as true in terms of her muscle, and just a little flatter in terms of her design. The red heifer is one I migrated right away to. When she holds herself together, gives that great presence, the way her neck comes out of her shoulder. I like the power she has, and yet still a maternal package. She's bold in terms of her rib, good in terms of that rear dimension. Longer she got out here as we go, I got a little more concerned in terms of the way her shoulder assembled up into her forerib. I'd like to change that for her to be a little bit more competitive, but make no mistakes, I think that's a high quality individual that's got a lot of uniqueness and a lot of breeding value on down the road for that young lady. She goes out here. Then we get into a pair of, I'm going to say, purebred cattle. I would assume maybe just a little more Angusy built type heifer here. And there's no doubt that she's so good in just her maternal smoothness, the way she blends from front to rear, the way her neck presents herself really well. For me, comparatively within this group, just need more of her. Young man did a nice job. As he gets going out here, he can give you a really good look. She maintains her balance on the move, but just need a little more of her. The Hereford heifer coming out next is, you could say, the same thing. I think her foot and bone matched with her neck and front end. Thinks that this one here's got a lot of future ahead of her. But within this group, she got just a little flatter in terms of her rib, not quite as much muscle as you get right in there behind her. She's a little bit more built for the long haul, and I think she's going to have a lot of good days. That young lady sure can show the wheels off of one any day of the week. She does a really good job, and that's a high quality heifer. And again, as we get out here, this one here has got a lot of good to her. She's a more powered up female in terms of thickness to her hip, stoutness, and a little more rugged in terms of the way she's built and put together. And I like those attributes really well. But as far as compared to the cattle ahead of her, we just got to smooth her up a little bit, square her a little bit in terms of out there through her hip. And she probably doesn't have as much bone relative to the body mass she has up high. But again, one that's got a lot of good to her. Another Angus Pierian heifer here as this one comes out. Very, very feminine, very smooth made, just a little more refined in terms of foot and bone. Could use a little bit more body, but boy, she's very attractive. Lots of quality. White heifer, very muscular, very stout. For me, gets a little bit in terms of her shape. And I'd change her front end structure, the way she goes knee to the ground just a little bit. But again, very, very nice female, outstanding class over here in your prospect show.
Well, congratulations over here in the prospect steer ring. Results out of Class 3. First place exhibited by Caden Mason. Second place will go to Parker Lockhart. Third place exhibited by Aubrey McIndoe. Fourth place, exhibited by Jet Moore. Fifth place went to Gage Hayes. Sixth place will go to Hallie Delk. And seventh will go to McKinley McMahon. Now in the ringies class 4, these prospect steers weigh from 780 to 799. Back over in the prospect heifer ring, results out of class 3. First place was exhibited by Kelton Arthur. Second place will go to Berkeley Clevinger. Third place, Bailey Wilborn. Fourth place, exhibited by Peyton Hartle. Fifth place will go to Taylor Otto. Sixth place, exhibited by Cato Kraft. Seventh place in that class, and congratulations to Ella Weldon. Eighth place will go to Maylee Reese. Ninth place will go to Strand Stacy. 10th place exhibited by Grace Richard. And 11th to Taylor Rowland. Well, now let's see class 4 over here in ring 1.
This is another one of those classes that's really pretty salty as you go down into it. There's genuinely about 5 steers in this one that I like really well. And saying that, this lighter colored calf that wins it, he's another one that, as you think about the combination of strengths, he's got muscle, he's well balanced, he's good bodied. In a set of really sound footed steers, he gets out and goes as well as any of them does. And yet, probably if I'm going to pick on him, I'd change the calf up in the way he turns out just a little in those front feet. And I think that's an advantage that the next steer that we're going to end up in second place has over him, but a really nice one to start a strong class. This black, white-faced, white-legged calf that we've got next, I like his bone, I like his skeleton, I like the way his rib cage lays in him. Do I think he's quite as thick as the steers on either side of him? Probably not. But I sure think he's got a lot of future, be a lot of fun to feed. He could sure have his day at some point in the future when you look at that bone, the skeletal correctness that he's got to tie to it. The next 3 or 4 calves here really get close to me. And I like the young lady's calf that we got come out in third because as we move him and we look at him standing still, I think he consistently stays a little more collected, better balanced than the calf that stands right below him. And that calf, in terms of the way he's put together in his shoulder, back into his heart and forerib, he's a little smoother right there than that steer that he beats that stands right below him. He could be a little bigger bone. This calf coming out next, one of my ones I really like and I really gravitate toward in this particular class because of his bone and his thickness and his body and his skeletal correctness and his flexibility at the ground. But whenever we set that rascal up and he stands there long enough, he starts to look a little bigger shouldered. He doesn't transition quite into his forerib as neat as he could. I think that calf's going to have a day. I think with bloom, condition, finish, I think that steer's going to have the potential to get awfully, awfully good. But I don't think he holds together quite as well today in this group, and I end up with him fourth. Smoke calf that comes out in 5th place. Just general body type, straightness of lines, good skeletal base, a lot to like. Good front end in that particular steer. He's one that gets a little wide up in the top part of his shoulder. I don't know if he needs to be clipped a little different to maybe help that, but he doesn't proportion, as you look at him from behind, quite as neat and impressively as those cattle that are beating him. But another steer that I think has the potential to get better and better, just a little plainer and more out of proportion in comparison to the cattle that are beating him right now. Shoulder branded calf coming out next. He's muscular, he's long, he's neat fronted. He needs to run a little deeper through his flank line. Follow him with a stout, big barreled calf that's just a little plainer fronted and not quite as attractive as we get on him on the profile. We end with a steer that's got ample bone, ample length of body. I think represents growth and cutability long term. In this case, he needs to be opened up a little wider and have more muscle to run with those cattle that are beating him. Nice class, really competitive on the top end. Let's give those set of exhibitors a round of applause for those cattle.
As we get back over here in on the Prospect Heifer side, and not as many heifers in this class, but wow, I tell you what, we got some top end quality here that sure gets you excited and take a look at. And you could talk about those in terms of a pair, but you know, the first one as she comes out here, you know, I would actually call this one very unique in terms of the way she puts some things together, because depends on how you like your cattle, where you want to start, you want to talk about her, you could sure do that. If you want to talk body, you want to talk front end, you want to talk a one in terms of just structure. But where she's unique to me is she's so good in terms of her side profile and her body shape. You don't realize that she's got so much to her till you get right up on top of her. I think she's still, you know, one is massive and yet smooth in terms of maternal build as you'd want to put one together. She's still very, very long-bodied, very, very nice heifer as we go. Now, we've got some things in the heifer in second that we should talk about there, but that's a good one to start with. And I think this heifer in second, I think she's extremely high quality to me as well. I like her bounce, I like her kind. And where she has an advantage over our class winner, she is stouter in terms of her foot size in terms of the true bone to her hind leg and the way she sets down and puts it at the ground. I like her power, but now when you get back off of her and look and study, even as well balanced as she is, she's just not as nicely balanced as that really, really high quality heifer there in first. But that's a nice pair that I like and talk about. When you want to talk about structure and you want to talk about ones that pick them up and put them down as good as you can make one, in this maintainer heifer this young lady has, she's a little green in terms of her condition today to have enough body to compete with the two right ahead of her. But when this young lady puts her in motion, she can pick them up and put them down. I think she's so impressive in just her front pasterns, the way she sets down, the way she uses her hind leg. I think that one's going to have a lot of good days ahead of her. Just gives up a little too much here today to move any higher. The dark red heifer, powerful, got some thickness to her top. I like the extra dimension she has, but she gets a little edgy in terms of her structure. I'd like to relax her off of both ends, especially in that rear hock, if we're going to maintain her from a long-term standpoint. But I do like her still balanced with that kind of dimension for her to fit right in that spot. Young lady here doing a nice job of show and let our way as we come out here and brought her around the ring. She's got a heifer. She comes out here. Again, that's got a lot of good from a practicality standpoint. She's very cowy, very broody. I like that upper shape to her rib, the dimension she has from a rib capacity standpoint. I'd like to give her a little more femininity in terms of her head and her neck. She's a little deeper from the top crest of her neck to the bottom of her throat, but yet it kind of matches her body shape, but a good kind of a female. The yellow heifer coming out here next. The young lady's got her set up well. She gives us a good look from the side, got a good profile. She's one that reads with a lot of quality. But we get out here and we get that one in motion. We still need to relax her in terms of her rear pasterns, give a little more natural set, a little more use to her rear hock. But again, a very, very nice quality heifer and a very good prospect heifer show.
Well, congratulations in Class 4 over here in your prospect steer ring. First place exhibited by Madison Shout. Second place will go to Olivia Moore. Third place was exhibited by Claire Collins. Fourth place, Corbin Marsh. Fifth place in Class 4 will go to Trista Lebsack. Sixth place, Taylor Rowland. Seventh place exhibited by Raylan Northington. In eighth place in that class, and congratulations to Chancey Hawk. Now over here in your prospect ring is Class 5. Back to the prospect heifer ring, results out of Class 4. First place was exhibited by Sarah Sullivan. Second place went to Kennedy Lockhart. Third place in Class 4 will be Ella Weldon. Fourth place, Ella Danielson. Fifth place, Avery Edwards. Sixth place was exhibited by Grace Richard. Now in ring 1, we'll look to bring in Class 5. These heifers weigh 990 to 1,000 pounds. Back over in ring 2, the weight range on Class 5 is 824 to 870. We would like to remind all of our heifer and steer exhibitors that we will be selecting a top 5 prospect steers as well as top 5 prospect heifers. We'll bring first and seconds back into the ring. We do ask that third and fourths be ready ringside.
Again, as we work our way through your prospect heifer show, again, a really nice class, but to me, there's sure a standout in terms of a class winner. A young man brings us here and just the epitome of one with femininity and center body, still a maternal look, really good in terms of her movement, mobility, and worked out where she's out here. We could power up just a little bit in terms of foot and bone to go with as much mass she has up high, but boy, that one is awesome in terms of her center body. Still get behind her, she gives this view, she's still got some thickness, but I like the way her neck comes up top side of her shoulder. I just think that's a very high quality heifer, good place to start. Heifer here in second, I think when she gets her set up and gives us a good look, she's really good up in terms of her neck. She's long bodied, but when we put her in motion, I just relax her into the front angle to her front shoulder. She wants to maybe reach out there just a little bit more than I'd like to see, and kind of tightens her up down her top as she gets out in there. But I like her femininity and her look in to fit in spot. The heifer here in third is one, gives us a nice presence. Neck comes up out of the top side of her shoulder as well. Balances up relatively well, but to me got just a little bit flatter in terms of her full rib all the way back and her rib and hip as we get out there. But again, a good sound, moving, good high quality heifer, fit right there in the third spot. The yellow heifer comes out here next, or the gold heifer, deep in terms of her side, square in terms of her shape down her top, out the opposite part of her hip. Still have some power, but yet one probably needs a little more lower third dimension, need a softener in terms of her hind leg and her structure knee down up front for her to be a little more competitive with the cattle right there ahead of her, but still one that's got a lot of quality, a lot of kind. Young ladies heifer round out the class. Love her muscularity and power, and we can talk about that in female. She's got some dimension to her, but for that, I'd like to see her more refined in terms of her head and neck from a femininity standpoint for her to be a little more competitive in this class, but I sure like a lot of things she does give us in terms of breeding value. Nice class again, you're in Prospect Heifer Show.
Another strong class over here on the Prospect Steers, and a really good one to start it. Another one I like a great deal, and I guess I'll make a comment here that it gets interesting to judge these two steers. One of them is really blessed with hair. He is immaculately presented, and the other calf that I think gets so close to him probably doesn't have quite the leg hair, the belly hair, the flank hair on him right now. And you club calf breeders have done such a good job of making them better and putting a hair coat on them. I'm complimentary of it. Just making that observation that it gets kind of interesting to evaluate this top pair, because I like both these steers really well. I don't think you can deny this calf that wins it. In terms of balance, he puts the most things together. Really good in the way he comes out of his shoulder into his forerib. The lines are parallel. He's big hip, big topped, and powerful. He's got a tremendous amount of bone underneath him, and he looks neat up through his front end. As we get into the heavier weight classes, these calves start to look a little closer to their end point, and I appreciate that calf's starting to look more like a market steer as we get into these 8-weight cattle that we're looking at right now. I think he's very appropriate in terms of maturity and where he's at. That being said, again, the second place steer, he's muscular, he's big forearmed, he's big hipped. Got a great turn to his upper rib cage, extremely flexible in his lower joints. I think that calf ties a lot of things together really well. He can't quite match the look and the eye appeal and the pattern of that steer that wins it, but he would be a pretty exciting one to feed and be thinking about his potential to be showing down the road. Young man, I appreciate you bringing a good one. I just like that first place steer a little bit better. The calf that comes in third, I refer to him and think of him as good, solid kind of cattle. Big rib cage, good degree of muscle, good skeletal base, still plenty attractive up in his front end. In comparison, he's not as level in his hip, and he can't quite balance with those two that beat him, but another one that I like a great deal, and he beats a good calf in fourth. This fourth place steer is muscular and stout and wide built, but he gives up just a little in terms of rib cage and the way that he's put together up in his shoulder in comparison to that calf that beats him, but another one I like really well. The black steer that follows him is long and muscular. He goes with some length of stride, gets a little more tucked in his flank. We follow him with a smoke that's deeper ribbed. He's got some look to him, but gives up some power and gets a little awkward in the way he sets down in his rear ankle as we watch him leave the ring. A big ribbed, wide built, kind of a baldy that comes out next, but a little coarser in the way he's put together. Accordingly, he gives up some balance. We end with a steer that's smoother shouldered, plenty long bodied. I like the structural base in him pretty well. We just need to open him up and make him stouter to contend with those cattle that are beating him.
Well, congratulations over here in the prospect ring. Prospect steering class 5. First place will go to Madison Shout. Second place, and congratulations to Tyler Knoll. Third place went to Carly McMahon. Fourth place to Corbin Marsh. Fifth place will go to Kayla Lippert. Sixth place, Ryder Clausen. Seventh place, Connor Mack. And eighth place, Daniel White. We'll now bring in class 6 over here in your prospect steer ring. Results of that last prospect heifer class. Class 4, first place exhibited by Coy Moonin. Second place went to Ramey Yoakum. Third place will go to Camden Weatherly. Fourth place, Marcy Koff. Fifth place, Lillian Masters. Now the rings are final class of prospect heifers.
And the young lady brings us a nice pair here in this last class of prospect heifers, and the white-footed one, white-legged one there to go ahead and win the class. She's a high-quality heifer. She's a little bit more, has a maturity in age, where I know we're showing them on weight, but more of a bred heifer look to her. But boy, she's high quality. She's very maternal in the way she's put together. She's still bold and robust in her center body, but yet smooth about her shoulder. Good in terms of her angles. Of her heifers, I think she's definitely right in terms that's a higher quality one, but make sure we know that one there has a lot of good to her and some things that we can put to use and work in terms of the cow herd as we go out there. Same with the black one here. She's really good when you study one in terms of center body, good in terms of her lines. For me, just a little more vertical upright in terms of her front shoulder, gets a little more jammed up from her nose to her shoulder in terms of length from that standpoint. But again, center body, she's high quality, has some good to her. Compliments to that young lady for bringing a nice pair of big heifers.
And congratulations in Class 6. First place will go to Marcy Koff, and second place to Kaylee Koff. At this time, over here in your prospect heifer ring, we're going to bring in those first and seconds. Our judge is going to select his top 5 prospect heifers. We do ask that third and fourths are ringside. Again, we're going to select the top 5 prospect heifers. Well, again, at this time, all of our first and seconds are entering the ring over here in ring 1. Our judge, Mr. Chat Holtkamp, is going to select his top 5 prospect heifers here at the Cattlemen's Congress. Let's go ahead and put our hands together for all these exhibitors as they enter the ring.
As we get out here ready to pick a champion, top 5 here in your prospect show, boy, I tell you, it's been really good, and that's what you'd expect to see. And I know Mark over there talked about, I think he talked about club calf breeders really stepping it up in terms of quality, but you know, I think as you look at from the just show cattle and taking and showing cattle, it's hard to maintain where you're at from quality. You're either doing one of two things. You're either getting better or you're falling behind. So I think as we look at every time the bar seems to be getting raised in terms of presentation, quality is just amazing. I just don't know where you'd go this top end. It seems like we just keep ratcheting that bar up there, and I compliment to everybody that's out here and competing that you come down here, and all the shows here at Cattlemen's Congress has been as elite gets, and this group here is no different as well. So as you'd expect, you could have a little bit of variation in kind, but there's still some things that I like. To me, it's just you can have some variation. I think as we come down here, and I was thinking about judging the composite prospect show, you know, you've got the different types, but yet I think it's good because if you come to our house, we still raise show steers to Angus and Simmental breeding cattle. I think those variation of those kinds still can make very good productive cows to make them, and I think these things got extra power, extra dimension, elite look, elite mind. So my pleasure. Folks, put your hands together. We'll get an outstanding top 5 on this side of the ring.
Well, congratulations, Grand Champion Prospect Heifer here at the Cattlemen's Congress. Congratulations to Sarah Sullivan. Second place in Sarah's class, exhibited by Kennedy Lockhart, will look to bring in that third place, Ella Weldon. And congratulations, your reserve grand champion Prospect Heifer. Coming out of class 3, congratulations goes to Kelton Arthur. Second place in Kelton's class was exhibited by Berkeley Cleveringa. We'll look to bring in that third place in that class, Bailey Wilborn.
You can bring him out here and park him. I love to judge good cattle, and a class like this is a lot of fun to work because the cattle on the top end of it are so strong. I think you could make a case each one of these top 3 steers has got a wow factor to them in some way or the other. In the end, this calf that I start with, I just don't think you can deny that rascal in terms of his base width, his bone, the center body width that he's got through him, the sheer degree of muscle. And you get on top of that, I really think that steer holds himself together extremely well when he gets out on the go. He's got reach, he's got flexibility. Of these top 3 cattle, he's easily the best in his foot placement and filling his track. You look at his knee, his pastern, slope of shoulder. It's impressive to be put together with that much width and power and have that degree of skeletal correctness to go along with it. I think that steer's got enough balance. If I'm to change him, I'll chisel a little bit off of that brisket or right between his front legs. I don't think he profiles quite as well as this steer in second. This one really gets my attention whenever I look at him on the profile. He's so good in his lines, so well presented, so big bone. Those legs are huge. He actually is more correct in his foot shape than the steer that wins the class. He is truer and doesn't scissor quite as much as that steer that beats him in here. And yet, as much as I like him, he's a little narrower in his base as you study the cattle on the go. He can't quite match the power of that one that wins it. I like this calf a great deal, but that's why he ends up in second. A different kind of steer is the one that comes in third. He's got a little more frame. He is good structured and good looking, but as we get down to finer points, that calf doesn't quite reach and fill his track as you watch him get out and move as well as the first 2 steers do. As I've said about several today, he's an exciting one to think about potential and feeding him and showing him down the road. I don't see him quite with the reach, and that's why I end up with him in third place in this particular group we've got out here. Good cattle remain in 4th and 5th, a lighter shaded pair of steers. I use that tan steer. I think he's got a little more to him. Neither one of those are quite perfect in the way they set down behind, but I think that darker tan is a more correct steer in the way he handles his hind leg, and the balance from his pastern up into his hock and the flexibility is a little truer. That's where I'd change that steer in 6th. Excuse me, I might have misspoke on placing there. I think that's my 5th place steer. 6th place steer is this black one coming out, a muscular, neat fronted calf. Needs to be a little more opened up underneath and have more depth in his flank line. A stout kind of tan steer that follows out next here. Not quite as crisp in his lines and as smooth in the way he's put together, but a steer that I appreciate the growth and the kind of, and a steer that we end with in a solid class. Plenty of good in him with respect to growth, potential cutability down the road. Not quite as correct in the way he handles his feet and legs.
Well, congratulations back over here in the Heifer ring. Your third overall will go to Kennedy Lockhart. Fourth overall will go to Berkeley Clevenger. And fifth place will go to Coy Moonin. Congratulations to our Prospect Heifer exhibitors. Back over in the Prospect Steer Ring. Results out of Class 6. First place exhibited by Finley Yoakum. Second place went to Alyssa Borson. Third place exhibited by Jason Calhoun. Fourth place will go to Luke Andis. Fifth place, Seal Hall. Sixth place, Lucy Bell Travis. Seventh place, Trista